Hello there, and welcome to the Bearded Peacock. It's my channel where we talk all things Leeds United. I'm, of course, George. And look, we have a special guest with us today, something a little bit different on the channel. A fellow Leeds United fan and a follower of Swiss football. And of course, host Paddy of the Swiss Football Podcast. It's Paddy Gunn. Paddy, hello, welcome to the channel, mate. Thank you for joining me.
Nice to be here. Thanks very much, George.
You're welcome, mate. How are you doing? How's it over there in Switzerland?
Yeah, it's lovely. It's absolutely cracking flags today. It's been very, very hot for the past week or two, to be completely honest.
Really?
I was in the UK not so long back, just the end of July into August, and to be honest, I much preferred the weather there. I can't deal with the heat, so this is absolutely killing me.
Well, it's been like they said that here today as well, mate. To be fair, I feel very warm here today. So it's similar here.
No, it's well. I got to be honest though, it's a nice day for a Friday. I think we'll once our son's asleep, we might afford ourselves a quick run down to the lake and jump in or something like that for 5 minutes. So that'd be nice.
Oh, that sounds fabulous, mate. Yeah, no such luck here for me, but there you go. But of course, we're here, Paddy, to talk about Isaac Schmidt, who has been linked with Leeds United. So I thought I'd reach out to yourself, being a Swiss football fan and based in Switzerland, to see if you could give us a bit of more of a lowdown on the man himself. But before we get into that, obviously you're a Leeds fan as well, like I said. So if you would just give me your thoughts and the viewers on, obviously it's deadline day today. So what are your thoughts on our transfer window so far? Do you think it's been a good one, or do you think we need a little bit more? What do you reckon?
I'll reserve judgment until the window closes completely on how good it's been. But I would say maybe so far it's not been what I've wanted from the window. I was fully expecting Somerville to go. I half expected Jorginho to go. I wasn't 100% sure if someone was going to take the punt on the amount of money that we obviously wanted for him. But after the season that he's had and the promise that he's shown in the second division, I can understand why a team like Brighton is going to outlay that money if they're on a bit of a spending spree anyway, which they clearly are. So I can understand why they've gone for it. With their coach being from the German leagues as well, he was probably well aware of Ritter and what he could do. Archie going was tough. I got to be honest, I didn't think he would. I thought we'd at least get one more season out of him. I figured that most clubs would be looking and thinking, give him another season in the Championship, maybe let him play in midfield a little bit more to kind of find his feet a bit more in the middle of the park. But clearly Spurs have just kind of gone, right, we've got the money. The amount is there. We can afford it. He's going to be brilliant. You can clearly see it. So they've taken the punt on it. And obviously, just with the way that football works, with the economics now, we couldn't turn down that kind of money. Clearly, I understand it from a business point of view. I get why the offer was accepted. Maybe they had to accept it as well if it was a clause that was put in there. It just kills the football romantic in there, doesn't it? You want a player like that to spend his entire career at the club, or maybe just one more year of watching him on the ball. But no bad feelings. Obviously, I hope he absolutely smashes it, and I can't wait to watch him go to the very top of the game because I think that's where he's heading. It's that frustrating thing that Gray was done quite early, and then Somerville and Jorginho seem to have been left a little bit late in the window, which leaves us scrambling a little bit and leaves clubs understanding that we are a bit desperate and we have quite a bit of cash, so they're going to be pushing prices up. But no, I think the players we brought in so far have been sensible, if not massively exciting. I think Ramazani could be the exciting one out of the bunch. Tanaka looks like a really exciting. Tanaka looks like a very solid player, maybe not the most exciting player, but I think he'll bring a lot to the team. And then, I think Schmidt is one, if it does go through, that could kind of sit somewhere in the middle. I think he's a sensible buy at 24 years old, and for the kind of money that's been spoken about, he'll take a little bit of time, I'm sure, but we can get into all that later. But there's potential that he could be very, very exciting because he loves to get forward, and I know that Farke likes his fullbacks bombing on, so we can see if that works.
Well, that was a question that I was going to pose to you, Paddy. And if we look at Schmidt, he looks to me like a real kind of attacking option. But obviously, you might have seen a bit more of, as obviously he's a fullback, but he looks like he loves to go forward and get into the attacking third. Obviously, you might have seen a little bit more of him. I don't know. I mean, like I said to you just there, I love the St. Gallen shirt that you're wearing there today, and obviously I've got the man behind me here as well. What kind of play should we expect? Obviously, it looks like he's done and dusted. And what's his favourite position as well, do you reckon, Paddy? Because he looks like a bit of a Swiss Army knife of a player, if you like. He can play very versatile, a lot of options. What do you think?
Yeah, Rob Conlon on Square Ball as well was talking about this recently and talking about how, look at his transfer marked page, and it seems like he's played absolutely everywhere. And that is one of his traits, that he is one of those players who will just go out and play wherever the coach wants him to play. But it pretty clear from his career trajectory, he's a fullback. It's similar to Berardi, I suppose, in the sense that he can play right or left. Doesn't seem to mind which side. I think for St. Gallen, historically, he's played a little bit more on the left-hand side and kind of cut in on his right, which he likes to do. But more recently, this season, he's been playing on the right-hand side. They signed a new left-back, so he's been playing there, and he's been out on the right-hand side. But can play midfield as well. Kind of tucks in as a defensive midfielder, probably in that kind of like Pep style that's become quite common recently, where the fullback kind of transitions into the middle. But and he does like to get forward. He loves to bomb on. I mean, we saw it literally just last night. They were playing in the Conference League qualifiers against Trabzonspor from Turkey, and he scored an absolute lovely curled goal with his left weaker foot from the right-hand side. Just ended up at the edge of the area all by himself and just curled it in first time. It's a fantastic finish, and it is what he's capable of. Doesn't score loads of goals, but he can really knock them in. He's got a great shot on him. Defensively, probably going to fit in quite well with some of our fullbacks, because I don't think he's going to be the strongest defensively. He's not the kind of fullback that, say, like Sam Byram was last season. Not necessarily bombing forward a lot because his legs don't really allow him to, but very, very solid when it even comes to fronting up against some of the top wingers in the Championship. He's not going to be that guy. A Jack Clark, I know he's obviously not in the Championship anymore, but a Jack Clark will get round him. He might have to get a bit physical with those players, but he is a physical player as well. He's not the biggest, he's not the tallest. Again, fits in with our squad quite well because we're not blessed with size. But he'll go toe-to-toe with anyone physically. He's got that low center of gravity. He's very, very, kind of stocky and well-built. So you're not going to get round him easily, but it's probably the weaker part of his game.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, Paddy. Do you think, obviously, a lot of people reckon the Championship is quite physical, although I don't think it's as much as it probably was like when we were in it, probably maybe about 10 years ago.
Agreed, yeah.
But how do you, there's a lot more silky players around in the Championship nowadays, and even defensively as well. But how do you think it'd fit in with the Championship sort of style, or the English style in a general sense? Do you think he'll take a bit of time, or is he sort of ready to go straight in? Obviously, we saw that goal. It was a fabulous goal, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Last night, and they drew the game in the end, didn't they? But do you think he'll take a bit of time, or do you think he'll be straight in, ready to go? Not for Hull, but maybe for the international break comes after the Hull game, doesn't it? So Burnley, isn't it, at home? I think so. Is.
I think physically he's ready to go. If you wouldn't be worried about him getting through 90 minutes, for example, if you're Daniel Farke, you've got in a kind of a well-built, fit player who's coming in. But we know with Farke, not as much as Bielsa, obviously, but with Farke, he will take a little bit of time to get into his system. Plus, he's going to have to get past two pretty solid fullback options in Firpo and Bogle. We haven't spent 5 million on Jayden Bogle to sit him on the bench behind Schmidt coming in. I think he's probably coming in as cover for those positions. Doesn't mean that he won't be able to force his way into the team. We all know that Jayden Bogle is not the strongest defensively, and if Schmidt can offer a little bit more solidity on that right-hand side, then Farke he's not the kind of manager that's just going to, leave him on the bench when he could be the better option. But I do think he'll take time. But like we said before, he's 24 years old. He's at a really good age, and we have the time to allow him to develop a little bit. And he'll probably just play his part, maybe a little bit like Ilya Gruev last season, who came in and I mean, Jesus Christ, when we played against Stoke, and Gruev started. I genuinely thought I'd never see him in a Leeds kit again. I thought, what on earth have we signed here?
He had a horrible game.
He looked like he could barely kick the ball. I mean, there was a set piece at one point in the second half, and it's like he scuffed the ground before he hit the ball. And I thought, he's done. This is levels of player I haven't seen for years. And then all of a sudden, just with that time coming into the squad, very, very gradually, he showed just how good he was. And I think Schmidt might be a similar option, unless somebody gets injured, and obviously we have to bring him in. But I don't have massive concerns about how quickly he's going to fit into the system and the style. I think he'll pick it up pretty quickly.
Well, that's good, because he does seem in a similar kind of mold to the ones that we've already got. Obviously, Junior Firpo and Bogle. What are your thoughts on Bogle, Paddy? Because I initially thought, if we're signing Schmidt now, he would be the one that would give way. I think Firpo has a bit of a weight over Bogle in that sense. For me, Bogle, he didn't. I don't know what it was. First couple of games, he just didn't look right. I thought Sheffield Wednesday, he played a really good game, particularly after the last 10, 15 minutes. But would you see him going over to that side potentially more so than the left?
It's an interesting question because, if you're thinking about general form and kind of, if you think about kind of coaching favoritism, then probably Firpo is Farke's safer option, as mad as that sounds, considering where Firpo's come from. But,
exactly.
But currently, Bogle's the one, because he's still kind of getting into the swing of things. I think he's still getting up with Farke's system of, I think he probably had a little bit more freedom at Chef to get up and down that line. But like we saw from Archie last season when he played at right back, and when Byram was in at left back, Farke doesn't really mind it if his fullbacks stay back. He doesn't need them bombing on all the time. He allows Firpo that freedom because we know Firpo can deliver when he gets onto the left-hand side. Bogle's still yet to show it in league games, I would say. But again, he'll have the time. I'm sure Farke's not worried about him. Again, we spent decent-ish money on to bring him in. There's a reason for that. But then again, you look at Byram, for example, and clearly Farke quite likes the idea of the left back being able to come inside onto his right, which was what Byram was able to do last season. And Schmidt, having played at St. Gallen for a few years in that position now, really enjoys that. He likes coming inside, working with the winger on the left-hand side to then pull inside and maybe have a go at goal or work it inside to the playmaker in the middle. So I think really, I don't think he's necessarily out for anyone's job in particular. I think he could slot in on either side initially. I think he will just be that cover for both of those players. I would be very surprised if even by Burnley or a few games after that he's starting, because I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll see kind of in the mess of the Christmas time whether or not that's where he comes in.
Well, that's where we need the squad, isn't it, Paddy? Really, I think you looked at the bench on last Friday night. It was laughable with the two goalkeepers, the young lads, and we just need better quality of players on the bench to bring on. So the likes of Schmidt, and maybe the likes of Tanaka initially, we'll have to maybe sit out, but you just think it's great to have these options. I know people are going, man, it's deadline day. People are watching flights and stuff like this and flight tracking and all that. But at the moment, it does seem quite, sort of low key. As of recording it, he hasn't signed yet as Schmidt. But I just want to talk about your podcast, Paddy, and obviously you're based in Switzerland, aren't you? And what sort of drew you to the Swiss football? And have you been watching it for a lot of time? Because I'm aware of your podcast and I have been for some time, but for people who aren't quite aware of it, what do you kind of do on your podcast over there, and where does your sort of enjoyment for the Swiss game come from?
Yeah, so I moved to Switzerland back in 2021. My wife is Swiss.
Right.
And we lived together in Manchester for about 5 years. I am from Leeds originally, went to Manchester for uni, moved around a little bit. And then because I'm a teacher, once I qualified as a teacher, I decided I was going to go back to Manchester. I got a job there and met my wife around that time. And she was coming up to the end of her PhD. And we could just kind of thought, right, what are we going to do? Are we going to stay in the UK? Are we going to maybe head back towards Yorkshire? Are we going to go, further up, maybe head towards the Scottish borders or something like that? And I'd obviously visited Switzerland quite a few times at this point to see her family and all this kind of stuff. And I just absolutely fallen in love with the place. I mean, to be honest, it's very hard not to. If anyone has been to Switzerland, it's hard not to fall in love with the place. It's probably just the price. The price of things probably put people off, but that's about it. And so I kind of floated the idea and I said, like, well, look, is there anything particularly stopping us from doing that? Would you not want to go back? I've got the Irish passport, luckily, so I didn't have to worry too much about the connection with. I mean, I know Switzerland's not in the EU, but they have a lot of agreements and stuff like that with them. And we just decided we'd go for it, see what happened. So luckily, got a job over here. So did she. Now we have our son here as well, so we're very much locked in. And I don't know, I've always been a massive football fan, obviously huge Leeds fan, but I've always been of the opinion that I'll watch football no matter what it is. If it's on TV, doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know if you remember during the lockdown when everything had shut down, and I think it was Korean football got put on the BBC a little bit. Do you remember? They were the first league that opened up and said, right, we're doing football again. And broadcast like 2 or 3 games on the iPlayer, and I was like, well, I'm watching that because I haven't been able to watch anything for months.
Exactly.
And so it was a no-brainer, really, coming over to Switzerland, and I just thought, right, I'll start watching Swiss football. I'll start getting into it. It's a fairly small society when it comes to the English speakers online, but there are people out there who are into it. And not long after we got married, we went on a little honeymoon trip down to the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland.
Right.
And we went on a hike on the second day. And as we were walking past the river that feeds into Lago Maggiore, and we just came past a football ground. And I just thought to myself, I said to my wife, like, oh my God, imagine playing football here. This would be amazing. Like, look at the scenery around us. So I went around and I started taking a few pictures just of the ground. And then we kept walking down and we came across another one in a town called Intragna. And Intragna is it's a little village basically built into the cliff face of the mountain. Absolutely incredible. And again, you just had this like football pitch, really, really well looked after football pitch with an old church up on the top, kind of overlooking it, a little clubhouse. And I just thought, right, I'm gonna start documenting Swiss stadiums and Swiss football grounds. And that's where the tag Swiss Stadia comes from.
Yeah. Sorry, Paddy. Yeah, this is of course on Instagram you go around and have a look at the different stadiums, and some of them are absolutely fantastic. So it's some wonderful. I mean, I must admit, I've been to Switzerland and I've been to a Swiss football game, and St. Gallen were one of the teams that I did see, and I must say it seems to have come a long way, because I think that was a first division game, and I think the stadium must have come a long way, because to look at it now, it looks incredibly like it's a good standard of. There's a lot of people watching it, isn't there?
Yeah, St. Gallen are a very, very well supported team. There's a lot of potential in that club that hasn't quite been met over the last few years, I would argue. But I think they're getting there, especially with qualifying for the Conference League this year. Beating Trabzonspor on penalties last night. If you haven't seen the winning penalty, by the way, I'm going to pop it up on my social media. Have a look later. It's a no-look penalty to win the into the top corner to win the shoot. That's absolutely amazing. But yeah, they're a really well supported team. Kaiben Park is the stadium there. Really, really impressive ground in comparison to a lot of other Swiss top flight sides, because we've got plenty of sides here who play in very small stadiums in the top flight. Yverdon, for example, in the top flight right now, their ground must be a couple of thousand at the very most. Really? It's very, very stripped back, but they've come up quite quickly. But then you have your Basels, for example, in St. Jacobs Park, and that's really impressive to go to. I went to watch them play Young Boys there last year. Really cool ground, great atmosphere. And now that Xherdan Shaqiri's back in Basel, the crowds are back. Yes. So that'll be good for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a it's a really interesting league. I'm not going to lie and say that the quality is fantastic, because at times it's not. There are some really good players in the Swiss league, and it's a league that kind of allows them to shine, because you can kind of spot who the really good players are. And Isaac Schmidt is one of those players. You know, he very much stands out when he's on the field. You can see that he has a lot of quality about him. And I guess for scouts, it's about kind of saying, right, is this guy just better than the players, the rest of the players on the pitch, or is he really, really good? You know, does he stand out for that reason, or is it just that he's slightly better than the most of the players around him? But I think, and we spoke about this before we did the this interview, was more and more scouts from the Championship are clearly looking at Switzerland, because just this summer alone, there's been loads of players that have come from Switzerland to the Championship, which has been really cool to see. You know, for someone who follows the Championship and Swiss football, it's
definitely.
Anthony Racioppi going to Hull, and Liam Miller and Chris Badia as well, all going to. I know Badia was in Germany, but he played for Geneva Servette for a long time before that. You've got Zancella going to QPR. You've got us with Willie Gnonto, obviously signing him from Zurich at a very, very young age. You know, that was a gamble, and you know, I was quite surprised at the time, because while I knew Gnonto was a good player, and Mancini, I think it was, that had called him into the Italy squad. You know, it was a massive call to bring him in at that point. I wrote for the Square Ball at the time, and I said, you know, this is going to take some time. He's going to need time in the under-21s to get up to speed with this. And when he came on against Liverpool, I think that was his debut against Liverpool anyway, and he just had that little turn on the sideline that's off. I think he bopped it off his head and then came inside.
That was right.
I thought, hang on, like, he's up to speed here. Like, he looks properly good. And I was really surprised by the impact that he had, because, you know, he was highly rated at Zurich, but I don't think anybody thought he was going to transition to top flight English football so quickly. So, you know, I'm sat here saying Schmidt's going to take time, but hey, you never know. Might be full well that he comes in and he absolutely smashes it. So fingers crossed he actually comes in.
As of, like you said, as of now, he hasn't just yet. I mean, I don't know what the dealing is right now, but I think he's coming in he's been flown in, Paddy, and he must have come from Turkey last night, straight from the. I know he was whipped off. Yeah, because I think he was whipped off about 60, 64, 65 minutes.
Yeah, I was wondering to myself, and I just thought, I wonder if that's a deal he's made with the club, that he's gone like, look, I don't want to not play, you know, I don't want to do that to the team, but if you could give me a bit of protection, maybe if the game's going all right after 60 minutes or so, maybe I come off. And considering that he scored the goal that, you know, would eventually take them to extra time, you know, if we've always got to caveat this by saying, you know, he's not here yet. We're fingers crossed that he will be. But what a way to leave the club if you you know, you score the goal in the game, you win on penalties, and then you go off and you go try out England for a bit. I'm sure they wouldn't begrudge him that.
Absolutely not. You know, you can't, can you? Like you said, it was such a. I thought when I was following the game, because obviously you get he's playing tonight. You get a lot of people on. I mean, Twitter's mad, isn't it? Like I said, at this sort of time, but people are saying, "Oh, you know, he's not coming. This, that, and the other. This is it." But then, and then he was obviously going to score. And then, yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a great send-off for himself. Like you said, if he does eventually come in. But obviously, you were aware of Willie Gnonto before a lot of people were. Then, Paddy, I guess you weren't. He's had a bit of a. I don't know if you've seen that. Schmidt's had a little bit of a bit of a history, hasn't he, with Willie Gnonto? Had a bit of a coming together, I think, in a game between Zurich and St. Gallen.
I think it was like 2.5 years ago now. I can't remember. I don't think it was long before Gnonto came to us. I think it was in the season preceding that. Yeah, I do vaguely remember that. It's another reason for people to watch Swiss football, because it can get feisty. It's the benefit of quite a small league, and the ups and downs are you know, they're the teams that tend to stay in the Super League have been there for a long time. You very rarely, or not so often, get a big team going down. You know, we had Grasshopper Zurich, who famously we played in the UEFA Cup early 2000s. I remember going to that game thinking, like, I had no idea Switzerland had a football league. That's fun.
Look at you now.
Yeah, and they went down a few years back and then came back up, and they nearly went down last season again. They're in a bit of a weird position, Grasshopper, right now. They're the most successful team in Swiss football history, but they just can't seem to drag themselves up at the minute. They're in a bit of a precarious position, but I think they'll be okay this year. So what you get is these teams have been playing each other for decades, and there's just old rivalries, like really, really intense kind of regional rivalries, because in Switzerland, quite similar to, I would argue, quite similar to the north of England, the canton that you're from matters a lot, and it's like your county, like a state in the US, So St. Gallen are in St. Gallen. They're the named city for that canton, and it borders onto Zurich. So there's a lot of clashing of heads there between the two cantons of St. Gallen and Zurich, but basically any game you go to, you've got some historic rivalries, and the players will always get at each other, and it's a fun league. A lot of red cards. Red cards.
Well, that's what you want as a neutral watching on. You want the games to be, like you said, feisty, lots of tackles going in, lots of goals, and that sort of thing. I mean, back to Schmidt, Paddy. Do you think? Obviously, he's Swiss. He's born in Switzerland, wasn't he? Obviously, he's not been capped at all. I don't think in any sort of level by Switzerland.
He's had like 2 under-19s caps.
Oh, really?
That's it. That's it.
Right. And I was thinking, do you think, obviously with him moving to England with us, and obviously being a bit more of a wider audience, do you think he'll catch the eye at all of the Swiss? I don't know who is the Swiss national coach at the.
It's Murat Yakin.
That's it. Yeah, of course, it's Yakin. Yeah. Do you think he'll catch the eye? I suppose it's a bit more of a bit more in the sort of eye of the manager, possibly.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely something that'll be attracting Schmidt to the option. Even if he feels like maybe I won't play as much as I have at St. Gallen, but if he's playing in the Championship and fingers crossed the Premiership the season after, then it's only reasonable to suggest that he might be in the thoughts of Yakin a little bit more when it comes to picking the team. The most recent squad was just announced yesterday for the Nations League, and he wasn't even on the reserve list. And there were quite a few people I saw online kind of saying like, "Oh, where's Schmidt? Is he not being considered for this?" Because he called up 2 defenders who either don't have caps or have very, very few caps. Dominic Schmidt was one of them, who plays for Basel in that position, kind of left-sided defender, left-sided fullback. And I think a lot of people were wondering, why no Schmidt? Why isn't he even on the reserve list? That seems quite strange considering how good he's been for the last probably year and a half, 2 years or so. He's been a pretty formidable player. Mm-hmm. But it's an interesting one, especially with the way that Yakin is going with the team. At the Euros, he massively changed the system that Switzerland played in. Up until the qualifiers, he'd been playing like a 4-2-3-1, kind of standard formation for most coaches now. And then suddenly at the tournament, he switched to 5 at the back, playing 3 centre-backs and 2 wing-backs. But usually the wing-backs were not quite who you'd expect. Dan Ndoye, who plays for Bologna, he would often play on the right-hand side, even though he's much more used to being much further up. And on the left, they were playing Michy Ebischer, who is a central midfielder. But then you've got players like... I'm going to get his name wrong, but Ricardo Rodriguez, I think his name is. I don't know why.
Yes.
I've got Roberto in my head, but I'm sure it's Ricardo.
I think it's Ricardo, isn't it? He plays for...
He's just gone to Betis, actually, to go and play with Mark Rocker and
Llorente. Oh,
and Diego
man.
Llorente, yeah.
He made a bad choice.
Well, you never know. But he's been the long-standing left-back for Switzerland for a hell of a long time. So it's always been really difficult to imagine him not being the starting left-back. So that's always been a difficulty as well. But he's pushing on now in years, and he's still in the squad. But we've just seen this summer there's been 3 big retirements from Swiss football, the international football, which was Shaqiri, Jan Sommer, and oh my god, names completely escaped me. He plays for Newcastle. He got sent off on the opening day. Shah, yeah, Fabian Schär. Fabian Schär, yeah. So, the old guard are starting to kind of move away from the international team now. So this could be the perfect opportunity for Schmidt to start putting his name into the hat for that kind of new look defense that needs to be built. And there's no doubt him being quite versatile. He can play as a kind of traditional left-sided fullback or right-sided fullback if you want. But there's no doubt he could play as a wing-back as well, given how much he likes to get forward. So I'm sure that, coming to a club like Leeds, coming to the Championship, coming to England in general, will probably raise his profile a little bit and let him show that he can do it on the bigger stage.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope so, because obviously that means that he's doing well for us. And if he's doing well for us, that might mean that obviously we're doing well as a team. So that, it'd be great to see him in the Swiss. We haven't really had, I was trying to think, Paddy, we haven't really had many Swiss players other than Berardi. I don't know if you can think of any. I can't think of any.
No, as far as I'm aware, and I'm fairly sure on this because I remember at the time thinking about it. I'm pretty sure Berardi's the only one. I think he's the only Swiss player that we've had, and I think he was capped once by Switzerland in some friendly. I remember talking to a Swiss mate of mine he's really into football. I remember saying like, "Oh, what's the general vibe on Gaetano Berardi, Switzerland?" He went, "I don't know who that is," and I was like, "He plays for Leeds." And he was like, "Oh yeah, you're Swiss guy, yeah. I remember looking at him once, yeah." I was like, "But didn't he play for Switzerland?" He was like, "I don't know." So I don't think it was a particularly important game that he played in.
No, it probably wasn't, was it? But it was a shame because he was obviously for us. I mean, we love him, don't we? He was such a great player and such a great lad as well. I mean, you have you dealt with Berardi at all, Paddy? Because you wrote you briefly. I know he's a friend of the Square Ball, isn't he? But and you say did you write for them? So did you?
Yeah. I write for the Square Ball. Yeah, pretty regularly.
You still do, yeah. Oh, fantastic!
I'm a pretty regular contributor. Love the Square Ball. Absolutely love what they do. I haven't had any interaction with Gaetano. Unfortunately, I would love to. He's currently coaching in Italy. I believe he's at Brescia, which I think is Massimo Cellino's team. I think he's one of the under-19s coaches or something there. But for a brief time, just after I moved to Switzerland, he was at Bellinzona down in the Italian-speaking part. And I just thought, like, I've got to go make a pilgrimage and go watch him play, but I never got round to it before he retired. So, but you never know. Hopefully, maybe he comes back and coaches down there at some point. Would be cool to get down and maybe grab him for the pod or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Use the connection for it, but no, I can't. As much as I'd have liked to, I've never had the chance to chat to him. But to be honest, he didn't spend that much time in Switzerland. He was mostly Italy based before he ended up here for a little while, and then we nabbed him. So.
Well, that was why I think he ended up with Leeds, wasn't it, really? Because obviously Cellino was, at the time, bringing in all them Italian players, and they seemed so random, didn't they, at the time? But they ended up actually doing all right. Antonucci and obviously not Belushi, maybe, but Silvestri. Silvestri was a good player, wasn't he? Made it to the Italian national team, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a bit of a little career kick a few years after he left us, didn't he? Because he ended up at a couple of decent teams in Italy. He was at Udinese for a while and Verona. I think that I understood what Cellino was thinking at the time. I guess I think he assumed that the second division in Italy would be good enough for the second division in England, and he was just flat out wrong. It just wasn't the quality of players that we needed. Plus, he had that kind of scattergun approach of like, I'm just going to sign 15 players, and if 7 of them are good, then it'll be a good one. But yeah, Antonucci had his moments. Ducara had his moment, and Silvestri was not a bad goalkeeper. I would never say he was a bad keeper, but he just wasn't good enough for what you needed to challenge for promotion at that time. I think you only need to look at the players that we're bringing in now. As to, I mean, I know the championship has changed. I mean, you even referenced it was a lot more physical, back then. But
yeah, it seemed to be.
But you look at the quality of players you've got to bring in now to get promoted from this league, and it's crazy. Yeah, you've got to really convince very, very good footballers that it's worthwhile playing a season in the championship. And you only have to look at, say, the players that we've lost this summer, and a couple of the other non-promoted teams have lost, and they'll spend a season here, but they're not doing any more than that. So it's a gamble.
Well, that's why I'm surprised with Willie. I mean, fingers crossed he's still here come tomorrow, but I'm surprised he's sort of stuck around, because he on his day can be even with the other 2 lads on his day, I think he could have been the best out of the 3 of them. So for me, I'm really surprised that he's still around, and obviously Everton seem to be the only one, Paddy, that want to take some kind of chance on him. But I don't, you can't. You've got to say, if we don't get up this time, he's probably gone the first day, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I think if anything, it would be a necessity for the club to sell him as well, because we didn't spend a lot of money on him. It's also a good thing about fishing in the Swiss league is you're not going to have to spend a lot of money. I mean, there's been some really good players that have left this league for comparatively really small money. Tieno Barry, who's just gone from Basel to Villarreal, he had a really good end to last season, a very good start to this season, and Villarreal have spent, I think, 13.5 million on him.
Wow.
And it's just not the kind of figures that you're used to in England for that kind of player. So, you can pick up some bargains here for sure. And Willie was one of those. Yeah, if we don't go up, I fully expect him to go. I don't think he'll be here for another year. I'm quite surprised, like yourself, that he's here now.
Definitely.
I figured because of all his posturing last season about leaving, and I don't know if I thought potentially Farke might be okay with it, because as happy and smiley as he can seem, there's obviously a slight bit of a problem child there if he is the kind of guy that's going to make those kind of moves. But you say potentially he's realized the error of his ways, and maybe he thinks, right, now that Crescensio's gone, now that Jorginho's gone, I can be the number one guy.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very happy if he wants to take that mantle, because
definitely
he's got the quality to absolutely do it. He just needs to he needs to get his head in the game a little bit more. He needs to stop throwing himself to the ground. He needs to stop complaining so much. He needs to stop, posturing to the referee and all these kind of like fake laughs and claps and stuff. Just get on with the game. You're more than good enough to rip apart any defense in this league. Just do it. Just go and do it.
Exactly. That is of all three of them as well. Last season, I felt as well with Ruter as well. They're all a little bit like that, throwing the toys out the pram a little bit sometimes. Just get on with it. You're way better than most of this division. The players in this division, just go and show it and win us games of football. I think definitely Willie. I think you're right, Paddy. I think if he gives him the top job, you're the top man, go and do it. Then I think Willie he'll enjoy that. You can see he's still enjoying it, even though he's maybe frustrated at times with the referee or whatever. He's obviously enjoying the challenge because he knows that he's better than most of these players that he's up against. And that's it. And, you're at a club like Leeds. He obviously understands his error last season, and he won't do that again. So, hopefully he'll stick around. But I have to ask you, Paddy, one thing as well. Obviously, you get the delight of watching JKA, don't you, on a weekly basis? Augustin.
No, I don't. He is so far out of the picture at Basel.
Is he really?
Yeah. Last season he was playing quite a lot, but ever since their new coach has come in, I have no idea what's going on with Jean-Kevin at the minute. Genuinely got no idea. I watched him a few times for Basel last season, and I mean, looking at it, it is mad the amount of money that we spent on him. I don't know what Victor Orta thought he was buying, because even at Basel, even in a league like the Swiss league where it moves a lot slower, where there's a lot more space, he still just looked so immobile and so unable to kind of make anything happen. And he scored a goal or two, but my word, I've actually, you know what? I've got no idea where he is right now. I think he's still at Basel. I think he's still under contract there. He might be injured. Yeah. He was injured half the time anyway. So, but he's not in their plans. No way.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, that does surprise me. Although maybe it doesn't really, because, like you said, his time with Leeds was, riddled with injury, wasn't he? And he barely played a minute. So, like you said, one of them Victor Orta signings where he just say, it's what Victor Orta does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Make poor decisions.
Bielsa called it straight away. He was basically straight. He saw him about once or twice. And he was like, "Nah, that's not happening. Sorry, but it's just not." I have no idea what happened there, but I don't think anybody does really.
No, fun of games, Paddy. But just to end it off with, Paddy, it's been great to chat with you, like I said, and thanks for coming on, mate. I really appreciate it. Where can we find, or the listeners and everybody find your podcast, Paddy? If where can we find you?
So I'm on Spotify mainly. On the if you just look Swiss Football Podcast, I should pop up. I am working on expanding that to other streams, but I've had to change the thing that I record with, and it's getting a little bit harder to kind of link to other things without signing up for accounts. It used to be that you could just send it out and it would go to all these platforms, but not so much anymore. But I'm working on kind of sending it to more platforms. But Spotify is where I am most of the time. But if you follow me on Swiss Stadia, on Twitter and Instagram, all the links are there. So you'll always find the most up-to-date podcast. Last season, I tried to do, initially it was the 15-minute Swiss Football Podcast. Yes. I tried to do a weekly thing of 15 minutes just to kind of sum everything up. Absolutely impossible. It never would have worked. So I'm doing a bit more of a kind of compartmentalized, like hour-long kind of episodes now, maybe once a month, maybe a little bit more often for kind of special episodes. I'm trying to do a few different things, and I'd love to have you on for one of those, George, for one of our kind of like.
I mean,
So,
I'd be very, very up for that, Paddy.
yeah,
Anytime, just give us a bell. I'd be fabulous. I'd be
definitely
delighted to come on and have a chat with you again. That'd be brilliant. That.
Yeah, because since you're someone who's experienced Swiss football, it's an interesting kind of thing to look at. So, but yeah, it's Swiss Stadia on Twitter and Instagram. If you follow me at Paddy Gunn as well on Twitter, and Paddy Gunn LUFC on Instagram, that's where all my Leeds stuff is. So if you want to look at stuff that I've done for the Square Ball, or I do a match recap after every single game. I just write up kind of my thoughts on the game, not necessarily about the game itself, but about things around the game, and just trying to kind of bring in a few different ideas. So there's that as well. But yeah, names at the bottom there. You can find me on there. Yeah,
fabulous, Paddy. Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, everybody go and check you out if they haven't already. And that's brilliant, mate. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully people will have learned a little bit more about Schmidt as well. And maybe by the time this goes out, probably this evening time, well, before the deadline, he'll have signed. So yeah,
fingers crossed. Because if we've recorded all this and he doesn't sign,
then it's we've learned about a new player, haven't we? It's always good to learn about new players.
You'll just have to watch St. Gallen more,
That's it, isn't it? Well, I'll be up for that. I'll be up for doing that. Absolutely, that'll be fantastic. But thank you for joining us, Paddy. And and we'll see everybody later. Have a good evening and enjoy the deadline day, mate.
Cheers. Hope it goes well.
Cheers, man. Bye.